He was online.
Yes.
Oh, he was online.
We just got Lakeisha.
Oh,
There
we
are a lot
couldn't
of
get in the
people
door.
getting in the door.
And you were calling and no one.
Not
That's fine.
We're gonna start cuddling.
This is yours.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just missed you.
Yeah? Oh, man, they're so good. It's a treat day, it's true. Interesting.
Okay, great. I'm gonna go ahead and get started then. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to Sarah Smith Elementary's GO Team meeting where we will follow the agenda as it has been emailed to you and publicly noticed. I am Elizabeth Zielinski. I would like to remind everyone that this is a meeting of the GO Team. Only members of the team may participate in the discussion. Any members of the public present are here to quietly observe. For members of the GO Team, please identify yourself when you speak. I'm pleased to call this meeting of Sarah Smith Elementary's GO Team to order at 3:04 p.m. Our first order of business is to call roll. Anne, can you please call roll?
Yes, Dwight Hudson,
Present.
Elizabeth Zielinski,
Present.
Simona Hinton Derrickson,
Present.
Ann Mittman, Carla Lamar,
Present.
Jennifer Moore, present, Chrissy Stewart, present, Lakeisha Smith, present, Ben Miller,
Present.
Andrea Almario.
Is there a quorum present?
Yes.
Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. This was provided to you and copies are in your email. Are there any changes to the agenda?
We did talk about adding a few things.
Yeah, we had talked about adding communications,
Okay,
and I'm assuming that would go under a discussion item.
okay.
Can we just add those in decided principles discussion?
Yeah.
Principles?
Yeah.
Okay. And may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move.
A second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? We will now review and approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. The minutes were emailed to you ahead of time. Are there any corrections to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
This has been moved to approve the previous meeting minutes.
A second?
I second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions, please say abstain. Great, our first discussion item, we'll be turning it over to Mr. Hudson for Georgia Milestones math data.
Okay, so before we start with that, we'll just do a quick overview. So our strategic plan is the guide for the work we're doing in the school. By monitoring the plan and ranking priorities, we can all work towards the common goals. Using the priorities in the strategic plan, the school leadership team developed a continuous improvement plan for the current school year. So where we are between September and December, we're reviewing and possibly updating the school's strategic priorities and plan. And this time we are going to discuss milestones. And the reason it wasn't discussed in the previous is they were still under embargo. And so we had to pull that from the discussion. We reviewed this a number of times, looking at the 5-year plan, the strategies that we were going to use and so forth. And so we will jump right into the data. So our fall map results. This is our map. This is map. And I think you all looked at that last time, but I wanted to just quickly kind of show. When you look at the overall for Smith, we're at about 43% proficient and above. And these are the different grade levels as you look through them. So 39% in second, which won't factor into the actual data, but it's good to know. 34 to 3, 47 the third, 44 for fourth, and 42 for fifth. So that is our proficient and distinguished. I'm going to go and press that mode so we can see this a little bit better. So looking at, this is our fall map results. And what we're looking at here is a breakdown by the different cohorts. And so what we're seeing this year trending so far is we're either right about the same. In most areas, we dropped in one. So our Asian students last year, at the beginning of the year, we were around 67%. This year, we're around 76% starting off.
What is the bar?
The bar is the district. And so Black or African American students, we went from 28 to 31%. Our Hispanic students is going to be an area of focus because they have actually dropped from 29 to 22%. And all of this counts. I know we look at, and I hate to break things down by race and subgroups and cohorts and so forth, but we have to look at that in order to universally improve. So as we look at the whole school, including our white students and multiracial, so multiracial grew to 58%. White students at the beginning of this year, this is just starting off, is 65%. And so that went down as well as Hispanic students went down. So these things, we've talked about it as a team, and we're looking at just basic tier 1 instruction, what needs to improve in general instruction to help these scores grow. And also we know that these are different cohorts of students. So even though this is 24, 23, 24, these are 6th graders now. And this is a different group, which last year they were 4th graders. So this is what we're looking at here. But if you look at 4th grade from last, well, that's not here. But if we were to look at 4th grade from last year and compare it to 5th grade for this year, then that would give us an idea of where we started. But looking at grade by grade, for the most part, we see improvement just starting off across the board. And I will say, even at, we're surpassing the district, that's the line in most areas. That's still not acceptable to be at 31%, still not acceptable to be at 65%. Even 76% is not acceptable. So it's just a matter of what can we do to keep these moving up. And that's the goal for everything that we're implementing this year. So the milestones map results. So overall for 5th, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and this is looking at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we were at about 47%. Compared to last year, it's negligible, the difference. It's about 47.3, 47.4, somewhere like that for last year. So we stayed pretty flat in math. New standards, pushing out a lot of different things. Other things happen in the school, but that's where we are. So overall, when you look at 3rd grade was at 48%. 4th was at 47. And 5th was at, what is that, 44, right? 38. That's right. So that is overall where we were by each grade level. And then this is just, I put this up just for comparison to look. There was a slight drop in 3rd grade. And you can see by looking at the bars, 4th grade grew in proficient and distinguished. So you see that there was slight growth there. And then there was a small decrease in 5th grade, because this is 43 and then 36. 44. So that is how we have our results, our overall results of 47%. And so we're looking to grow from there. We stayed flat, which with all the changes was, we're not pleased. The team is not pleased. So we're looking at ways of increasing that. But there was a lot of stuff that was happening with the changes and
Can
everything.
I ask a question
Yes.
on the last one? Was there anything particular to fifth grade that was done last year? Because they moved their red to yellow quite significantly.
The best thing to say is the teachers.
Yeah, the targeted.
You know, we have Ashley working with the teachers, and then with things, you know, because we're really focusing on the conceptual basis. That's what the test is based on. So she was in there working with a lot of the teachers to help them with the conceptual part, making, you know, doing observations in the classroom and so forth. And that is part of the goal too, for us to reduce the red. And that's why you see us moving, you know, in that direction too, is very good for this year, and hopefully we'll continue that trend.
What would this look like compared to 2022?
I will have to pull it and see.
I think that would be helpful at our next meeting. I think some of the other data to see is to have a 3-year trend of 2022, 2023, and 2024 data. And so these are the results, but then it would also be helpful to have the data of the growth. So what we see, even as grades in growth, and what we see in growth in our different student populations, I think would be helpful as well to figure out where, you know, different places we want to invest. And then I'd be curious, I know that the milestones for both math and ELA have different sections within them.
Mhm.
And so I would be curious how our school performed on the different sections of the math and ELA test. For example, I know that ELA, 47% of that is writing. And so I would just be curious how we did in writing, and on the math, you know, a portion of it is geometry, and
So
it would
we
just be
can
interesting to see
go
that.
a little bit further into that, because we did have it. I do have access to that. What I will say is, speaking from 22, I know that we did drop from 22 to 23, and then we held still from 23 to 24. And so now the goal is to keep going back up, because I remember when I first came, we looked at that data for 22, and so it did go down. You said growth patterns and
I think growth patterns, I think a 3-year trend. I think knowing how many students grew at like low growth, low average growth, high growth. I think knowing what the trends are for growth. I would be curious to see the spring math results and look at that, and do the spring math results really line up with milestones at all?
they
The way-
do. We
way we
score
see 'em?
slightly better than what the map says.
Yeah.
So whatever map where we score with this at the end of the year,
Yeah.
we always score slightly better than that on map.
From year, I'm sorry, last one. From year to year, when we're extrapolating the data by social groups,
mhm.
they do investigate social barriers, right? Because it can't just be race. It has
Well,
to
it's
be
not,
something else.
well, in the most
Sure.
simplistic form, they do look at race. There are lots of other questions,
Sure, sure.
because within white and black, you can look at
Economic,
socioeconomic status and things of that nature. That may have an impact on it. We don't have access to information going down that far, drilling down that far, but I'm assuming that if I ask for it, we can get some of our people to pull that information out for us. But those are some of the factors, but overall, they do look at that basic by race, but we can also pull it up by gender.
Yeah.
We can also, now this is what I have access to, by gender,
English learners.
English
Yeah.
learners, gifted, special ed. I can pull it up by all those, and we do look at all those when we're sitting. Some of them we can't show, because if the group is smaller than a certain number, then that violates FERPA. So that's why we keep it really general in these meetings, but amongst our team, we look at every single one.
Well,
Let's see.
I'm asking more so when you're creating strategies,
Mhm.
like, right? Because it can't just be a broad sweep, well, let's just bring them up. But then what are their barriers?
So the teachers, that's where the teachers really dig
Yeah.
down into what they need, especially for tutorial.
Yeah.
When we talk about what should they be doing with the students, they're looking at map. And they even have a very specific view based on the RIT scores and what they need to work on with them.
Yes.
So it's not just a matter of, this is the overall data, but when you look at what teachers are doing within their classrooms, whether it's in small groups or for the students that are getting pulled for tutorial, then they should be pulling and working on the specific skills that those students need. So tutorial looks different across the board, depending on what class you go in, just based on what do those students need within that class. And the same thing with small groups. So this is Go Team discussion time. What do you all notice and what are your wonderings? And we're getting some of the wonderings.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we noticed that we need to discuss?
The top and bottom are the top line is the average for fall, winter, spring, right, of 2024.
The top line is, remember,
Versus-
milestones is end of grade.
Okay,
So this is milestones that we're looking at. This is what the school is rated on based on third, fourth, and fifth grade scores and where we score. And that's just one time at the end of the year, every year. We use MAP throughout the year to kind of guide us and have us gauge how we're doing and to look at how we're performing in addition to classroom assessments. But this is end of year, like when we talk about MAP is a checkup, milestones is the autopsy.
no, I answered my question.
Well, and MAP tests us against the national norms
Yeah.
of what other students are doing. And I really like MAP growth, looking at the growth scores for my own kids, just because it tells you what your child will be expected to grow based on their achievement compared to their peers. And so I think looking at the growth will be helpful as well.
Okay. Any other wonderings?
Can you go back to the question? Yeah.
What do we notice? What do we wonder that based on your school's current trend data from MAP assessments and end of year test assessments, which student subgroups and grade levels show the most significant gaps or unexpected trends?
We discussed that.
Based on our school's trend data from MAP assessments, milestones, and other indicators, are there specific trends that require more focus and attention? What additional questions do we have? And so that would take us looking at this data, as well as looking at, looking at the gaps here. And so when we talk about the gaps, we're talking about one group scoring at 65, 68, 67, 76 year to year, and then other groups scoring 31 and 22. And although, some of the groups are scoring right with the district or above, it's, to me, that's, we want to do better than that. And I believe we can do better than that.
But even for the Black students, if that's the district's, that bar is saying that's the district average, or
That line.
That's the district.
That's the district.
That
that's
line.
even still a problem just for the district
Yes, it is.
expectations.
Across the whole.
No, the district's expectation is that we grow.
Yeah.
That's not the district's expectation. That is where the district is
So do I.
as a whole. But this is not the expectation. We want to see, they've asked for double-digit growth if possible.
Right.
Following, everything, guidelines and implementing things properly. They look for double-digit growth if possible, but whatever we can do reasonably and based on what the students are doing and so forth.
So I know that we've got a lot of support in the classrooms with Ms. Barnett, and we have Ashley Upshaw, and we have PLCs. I'm assuming we're doing that all continually.
Mhm.
So what else is being added beyond just doing the same thing and hoping for better results? Is it more accountability, more deeper instruction, more hands-on? What else is being done?
So honestly, part of it is we had a lot of new teachers.
Mhm.
And so like when you said, well, what's the reason for the growth? I think that's coming from the instructional coaches working with the teachers that are new and helping them with strategies. That's one area. We're doing tutorial this year, hoping that that will have an impact because we're looking at specific students for tutorial.
Mhm.
We have Miss White, that is pulling students who are her students? I think her students are the bubble students. So we have, EIP is covering the students that are struggling, gifted is covering the students that are excelling. We have tutorial, and then Ms. White is also pulling a group of students that are bubble kids that can go to the next level. And she's working with them specifically on reading. So that is some of the stuff that we're trying. Math, we're still talking about some different possibilities, but we've also added back some electronic resources, happy numbers and struggling, which I'm waiting to see what happens with struggling because it is super interesting. Who's
I was there yesterday.
talk to them about struggling?
It is, yeah, it's a whole, first, it, if I could just show you, it only has, the shapes, so when the students initially log in and they start their practice, it doesn't really give instructions, it kind of leads them into figuring out what it is that it's asking from them. I am very excited about yesterday we had our training, our first training was more like showing how it works and how we can set it up so that we can launch it to students. But it is figuring out these math problems. Essentially, they're doing what we teachers assign to them, multiplication, division, they're working on that, but they're figuring it out by themselves, it makes sense. It's all visual, colors and sounds, and it alerts them when they're taking a different path, and so I'm myself very interested and very eager to implement it in my classroom because we're going to be doing that when we do small groups. And just, I mean, we can incorporate in a whole group instruction, so there's many things that we can do with structuring.
And I'm sorry. go
Oh,
ahead.
no, and it's different from the happy numbers that, we've been using, which is also a great platform to use, but it's completely different. And I think the students are definitely going to be excited to use structuring.
And so in addition to that, there's well, first of all, struggling is different because it is very conceptual. So like she said, there were no directions on there. So you had to go in and play until you figured out what it wanted you to do, which is that productive struggle that we talk about, but they're rewarded for the struggle as well. So then they start moving through. I mean, we were in there when it was time to move on, we were quiet and still working at it because people wanted to go up to different levels. And then also Ms. Barnett for math. This is not an intervention, but she does have a math club, and we have about 50 kids in the math club that meet in the morning on Tuesdays. And it's not an intervention, but it's just to build the love of math. And so the more, the more love that you have for a subject, the better you do. I was in love with Spanish. That's why I made it through how far I made it and kept going with it. So
Is the math club invitational?
there were invitations that were sent out.
Okay.
Not invitations, I'm sorry. There were applications that were sent out if you want to join the math club. Kids actually even did commercials and announcements about it as well.
On math, we are now using Georgia Department of Education learning plans. Are we supplementing that with anything, any curriculum?
We supplement it based on what the students need. So that's part of what they plan for in the PLCs. But the overall curriculum is just the Georgia DOE learning plans.
But what curriculum do we supplement it with? Is there?
Not curriculum, based on what
Okay.
the students need. Like say, for example, students, on the learning plan is something with multiplication and they're struggling with that. That's where the teachers will come in with manipulatives because the whole thing is moving from concrete to abstract. So if we see students struggling in the classroom with a theme, then the teachers will go in and work with them more concrete with manipulatives, showing them different strategies, and then hopefully move them to the abstract where everyone else understands. And that's part of small groups, and that's where the focus is on small groups.
In our cluster, is that what other schools are doing as well, who are seeing the growth that there are schools in our cluster who had math growth this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are, and I'm just curious if we know like what they are using to increase their math.
I'll talk back with them. I talked to Brandon especially kind of get an idea of what they're doing. I don't remember specifically right now, but I can get back with them and try.
And even, I think Eat Rivers had growth in that.
So going back, and I just want to skip back to just a kind of refresher of where we are at the 47% overall. When we look at our numeracy goals, our goal is to increase from 47.3 to 52.3 in numeracy as measured on milestones, which each cohort of students demonstrating a 10% increase. So not only are we just looking at overall going from 47.3 to 52.3, but also looking at each group of students, and that includes SPED, GATE, so forth and so on, moving up 10%. And so when we focus in on our math, oh gosh.
Sorry, can I ask another question on the gaps? So just thinking back on that graph. So our Hispanic population are we looking at the impact, do we have support specifically in the DLI classrooms for that Spanish math instruction? 'Cause
So,
isn't,
go ahead.
in the DLI, math instruction is done in Spanish, correct?
Right.
And then when they take math, that's taken in whatever their native language is, right? Okay, so with scores like that, I'm not sure what the growth is over a year, but are we looking specifically into like that program and how to do they have like math, Spanish materials?
So,
I can speak to
Yeah,
that
okay.
because I am
Yeah.
DLI in math, in
Yeah.
Spanish, teaching
So what do
math,
you
and
have?
then testing in English.
Yeah, so
I
that'd be a
think-
great.
So, yes, all material is in Spanish, instruction is in Spanish. However, for the DLI program with Bridge, there is an opportunity for us to bridge. So we kind of we take the students from the Spanish side to the English side, and that's when we pretty much connect. And we fill any gaps that they might have, because we do have students who are not, Spanish is not their home language. So just to make sure that there is that connection between the English and the Spanish part, there is a bridging portion of our instruction in our week, in our planning. And also, they are the platforms that we use. We have the Happy Numbers, which is mainly in English, even though there is a Spanish side, and the Dreambox, which is in Spanish. So we're working with both the practices in both languages, and we're bridging within our typical instruction, class instruction. And then there's small groups too. Besides, we have our ESOL teachers who also reinforce, and our partners who make sure that if there is any gaps between what I teach in my classroom, that they get that reinforcement in the English side of the DLI. So I feel confident that we are.
and I'll say, for example, last year, I walked in and I saw Montano just teaching the students about decimals and decimal places and moving them. So I said that was a good example of the translanguage bridging piece where they're using and cross-referencing the languages and the subjects in each class.
One more, a follow-up question, I guess, for that population. I've heard that La Amistad has started going into some schools, like to do after-school programs at the school. Have La Amistad asked us to do that here?
Not yet. We send kids to La Amistad, but
Okay.
they haven't asked. This is actually ELA data. I have to go back to that. Okay, let me change one thing real quick.
So this where we're supposed to do the needs assessment.
Yeah, but I need to add one more thing. I accidentally copied
Yeah.
just, ELA, and I need to add.
How has attendance has it been holding steady in the 80s? Has attendance been holding steady? In the
We're
80s?
just above it, like 89 point something right now.
Okay.
That's kind of weird. Let's see why. Okay, sorry about that. So here's the math.
Mhm.
So the math action steps are provide professional learning and guidance in PLCs regarding contextual problem solving, conceptual understanding, and productive struggle. So that is occurring on a regular basis. Monitor the implementation of contextual problem solving and conceptual understanding and productive struggle. And so one of the things that is being done this year that has been a huge help is we've been going in collaboratively, and they're picking certain teachers to go in, and we're learning from different teachers in the school. So we'll go in as an entire math team, 4 or 5 teachers, observe a teacher, debrief, talk about what the good strategies are, what we saw that was good, what we can learn from, and how we can grow. And so that's happening as well as, administrators going in and coaches going in, not evaluating, but observing to help increase the amount of conceptual understanding and productive struggle. And then implement PLCs with fidelity, focusing on lesson internalization. So we don't want the first time the teachers teach something to be in front of the students. So that lesson internalization happens in the PLC where they actually sit down and sometimes practice and go through the lesson before they actually teach it to the students. And that's been working. All of those have been working well. So, I said Carla. And she wanted to give some input because she's in all the PLCs. But that's what's happening. And then that's the instructional coaches and the admin team that work on that. And we evaluate that on a regular basis. And we're there. So for the most part, we're right there for each of those.
Can you give some examples of like the feedback? Is it just kind of anecdotal, or do you have specific things that you're looking for in each lesson?
So the main things we're looking for are those conceptual understandings and the productive struggle. And to be just quite frank, like the teachers taking a step back because we learned and we taught for a number of years where we had to be the ones on stage. And so that's very hard for teachers to pull away from. And so getting the students to talk more, talk about math, discuss how they're going to solve a problem, that's one of the harder things for teachers to do, but it's so necessary in order for our students to excel and be able to grow in math. So that's one of the main things that we look for, as well as the productive struggle where we go in and that they're getting the conceptual understanding and not just doing rote. Because, you know, just knowing 7 times 8, 4 times 5, we don't want them to just know it. They have to understand conceptually why. That's why we have the manipulatives that they use, the area models, and all of those type of things that they're using in the class to get those things conceptually so that they can, before it goes to rote, just to understand why you're doing those things. And those are the type of questions that they're asked on milestones. Not so much straight computational facts, but asking them to use their math brains in order to figure out a lot of problems.
So then would there be like evidence of that? Like, do they like post evidence of their learning, or do they keep track of their, you know, their work that they do? How, I mean, if it's so conceptual, you know, it's like, how are you making sure that that concept is making it into?
Well, it shows on paper.
Okay.
It's just not, it's not, when I say, let's say, for example, we don't want to see 4 times 5 on the paper. But it may be, okay, show me an area model representing 4 times 5. Or it may be, John needs to wash a area rug that's 4 by 5.
Yeah.
There's 1 ounce for each foot.
Yeah.
How much, you know, that kind of thing. So they do show it, but it's not like we're just asking for straight facts. We want them to do it conceptually. We want them to do it in a problem solving way, real life.
Yeah, there is that application that it comes to, we start our lessons or weeks. And then towards the end of the lesson or the end of the week is the application. So for instance, if you were doing a statistical patterns, right? So they get to apply it. So now they have a store and they're shelving, they're restocking the shelves. And how many cans of food will go into a shell that has this measurements. And so it's that, so when they get there to that application, they already come prepared with doing the multiplication, they're figuring it out. And we do have our, well, they do it in paper, so they obviously there is that recording. We have those booklets that has been made for us.
I'm curious if, as you're doing the reviews, if, you know, we used to be a school that had departmentalization starting in 3rd grade, where teachers specialized in math or ELA. And I just wonder if you think there's value in considering that.
So the reason why they departmentalized or de-departmentalized was because the data wasn't showing any growth.
Well, it would be interesting to look at the DLI data because they are departmentalized. So it would be curious to see, it should compare DLI results on math or milestones or math to traditional classes, because we have classes that are departmentalized within our school.
Just 5th grade and 5th grade and of course DLI. Could be interesting. All right, so I'm sorry, I couldn't see that. Are all CIP goals reflected in our strategic plan priorities? If not, which CIP goals are missing and should be added to the strategic plan?
Did you say you added like every cohort going up by 10%? Did that get added to our
It is.
SMART goal? Okay.
Mhm.
I just have.
Right at the, I'm sorry, right at the top, Sorry, whole different discussion. It cut off,
Oh, okay.
but it's as measured by milestone with a 10% increase on in each
In every,
cohort.
okay, perfect.
Mhm.
In literacy, we also have, you were talking about numeracy, right? Or literacy as well.
I was specifically talking about numeracy because that was what we talked about, literacy.
Okay, there's a 10% increase for all students in literacy, but then there's a line, we will decrease beginning learners by the following.
Mhm.
Decrease,
In that category, in the
So-
red.
So that red, we want to see the red move to yellow or the red
oh,
move
I
to
see,
green.
I see.
So we're working on decreasing that big number like we saw, what was it, 5th grade?
Mhm.
Where they went up because they actually decreased the amount of beginning learners.
Moving to developing.
That, the language on that, I got lost in that.
Yeah, I could see that. But it's going back here,
I understand.
not only, just for the sake of everyone that's listening to, and let me make sure I'm presenting that again. Just for the sake of making sure, like, this is a perfect example
Yeah.
of where we want to go from year to year. This is, this is a more realistic example, but 12% is a big deal. And this one increased a little bit, but they also increased in distinguished and proficient. So they actually did better this year than they did last year, even though this number increased. We want to see this number decrease and this one increase, but ultimately we want to see everyone in the green and dark green.
So the question is, of the continuous improvement plan goals that were stated and we discussed, should we put more?
Or was there something missing? I'll go back to what it said. Are all CIP goals reflected in our strategic plan priorities? So these are the SIP goals. And this one that we reviewed many times is our strategic plan priorities. And it's the same here with the literacy moving, milestones, numeracy. This was care team when it began, but it's the whole child team. And CCRPI.
The only thing that's missing is the whole child team from,
That's on the priorities. Implement the whole child team with 100%.
it is in the goals, but should it also be listed in these 3 goals as part of the improvement plan?
So I think, let's go back.
Oh, I see.
That is the whole childhood intervention.
Okay. But even, you have a specific one for attendance, but then you have a specific one that says social emotional challenges and suspension. So are you saying that this whole child intervention encompasses these 2 boxes?
It doesn't.
Okay.
It really focuses on attendance, but our suspension rate is super low.
Okay. What about the social emotional challenges, which could support
That's what whole childhood intervention does. So what happens is, there's 2 things that happen. Every Monday, there's a whole childhood intervention team meeting where they talk about students that are having trouble, whether it's social emotional, whether it's academic, whether it's behavioral. They talk about those students. And then the first thing on our agenda, which happens after that meeting on the admin team, is we talk about any students that we know that's having trouble. So there's a lot of talk about students that goes back and forth between those committees to make sure behavior, social, emotional, and things of that nature are handled and discussed.
I'm asking that, since this is a specific SMART goal here, the language is just missing from there. So do you need to put the language specifically, or is it okay if it just stays in the strategic priorities? Like, the language is there.
I think it stays because these have, this is specific 3 goals that are set in the SIP, right?
Okay.
So we have our literacy, numeracy, and whole child intervention. Those are the 3 specific goals. It stays here, but it's still part of our daily interaction. So it's not a separate breakout goal for that. It's just that this is our overall plan for 5 years, and this is how we're gonna move there year by year. But it still includes addressing the needs of students, social, emotional behaviors and things of that nature, because that's part of our daily operations. And that's why in some of the language, you'll see whole child team meets 100% of the time. And so once they started, they've been meeting every single week, except for the weeks that we don't have school.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? All right. Did we have any changes to enter? All right, so on to our next favorite topic, which shouldn't really be a whole topic. It should be, we have a committee.
I haven't formed the full committee yet. We do have, it's Lakeisha and Jennifer and I, from the GO team. And then we had said that we wanted to have 3 parents and a couple of 3 students as well, trying to make sure we have primary campus, intermediate campus, and different types of classrooms covered. So,
Okay, I have one parent to send you,
okay,
that was very enthusiastic about it.
okay.
I'll send that parent to you. His last name is Park, but
Okay.
I'll forward them your way. And then we need to pick out 3 students.
So that's what we have in our notes here from our decision from our last meeting. It wasn't one of the required, it was an optional element for how we go about doing this. So I don't know if there's students that are kind of ambassador sorts of students, or if you have any of those types of things in the school, it could be a nice way for them to participate.
Okay, I'm thinking about 4th graders since they'll be invested in it.
Okay,
And we'll think about 3 or 4 4th graders. I was looking at 5th graders first, so I think 4th would be better.
okay. And would imagine if we go much younger than that, it's.
Yeah, it's gonna get a little difficult.
All right, thank you. So I'll connect with you so that we can fill out the committee, and then we'll go through our next steps. We're in our minutes about collecting feedback, public comment, and all that.
What did I miss? I missed something?
You said any debate.
I was thinking of the debate members.
Oh,
There was a debate.
Yeah,
do you
wonderful.
have some good 4th graders? Can you give him 3 people?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
All right.
They'll probably be very good.
And so then maybe if we could then revisit this at the next GO team meeting, there'll be more to share.
And we may, I guess if we're not meeting about full GO team, we can touch base and have that committee set up if you wanted to meet in between the 2.
Yeah, so I'd like to try to get an initial meeting going, or at least just to get the committee to know who everybody else is and what our goals are ahead of the next GO team meeting.
Okay,
That could be a healthy goal, yeah?
okay.
Okay.
All right, we have about 8 minutes, and I have 2 more things to address. So we know about the committee. So principals report, I met with PTO today and they shared some things about communication that we can improve. And so we're looking into those things. We had a big discussion about dojo versus email. What else? Dojo versus email, some of the consistency of the emails going out, coming from the different grades. And just knowing that, what I do want you to know is that all grades are supposed to send a newsletter, and they have a basic skeleton, but it's not coming from each grade member. They all write it together during their PLCs, and then they send them out individually because they make their adjustments. But the core basic information is supposed to come from the team putting it together, and then they just add their little, twist to it and whatever they wanted to add to the newsletter. That's what's supposed to be happening. I'll follow up to see if it's not happening or why. And we saw some examples of some good communications today. So we'll just check and make sure that everyone is on the same page. And that'll be going out this week in my newsletter to the staff. Were there any, I know that you had some concerns. Let's keep it like general, but not teacher specific.
Oh, no, I don't have any, yeah, no, mine were mainly general, and mine, I was curious as to, because there's a lot, obviously, there's a lot of communication going on. There's 2 campuses, there's administrators, there's PTO, there's SSEF, there's Go Team, there's Dojo, there's Remind, there's newsletters, there's emails, there's blogs. So I'm just, I know what I'm dealing with, but I kind of wanted to hear what's going on at the school and what the teachers are, like how teachers are getting their information and what that looks like when it comes to dates, happenings around campus, if there's a field trip, how that looks, because that's the side that I don't know. I don't know what it looks like in the building.
So if you want me to, 4th grade, we meet every Friday. So in our grade level meetings, we each have assignments, and so we have a person who does the field trips, and so we come in together and we kind of talk about what it is, the dates that are coming up. And that's how we kind of skeleton our newsletter. And then I take my newsletter, knowing the dates of things that are coming up, field trips, things like that, events. Then I kind of make it for my classroom, because there's some needs for my classroom, and then that gets sent out Friday, and that's a newsletter.
So like, are dates like mapped out for like a semester, a month, a week? Like how far in advance are things mapped out generally?
The newsletter is a week,
Yes.
so every week is when we send it to parents.
Because
I think
what
you're
I'm
asking from my
thinking that-
end. Are you
Well, yeah,
asking?
I'm asking like, because like some things come from teachers for parents to do that are like school-wide. For example, like, let's say conferences. Like sometimes you hear about them right before, sometimes you hear right after. I don't know if that's like, if there's a certain place where teachers can say, I know, in November, I've got this going on. I'll notify a parent, 2 weeks before, a week before, a month before, to keep on their radar,
Mhm. So what, I send out a weekly letter, a
Okay.
weekly newsletter, and we also have a master calendar that's internal.
Okay, so there's a master.
There is a master calendar. It needs some cleaning up,
Okay,
but there's a master calendar. And usually right now, I think I have dates all the way through November.
November, yeah.
So early November is on, well, not the master calendar. The master calendar is whenever I get a date, I'm putting it on there.
okay,
But for our newsletter, we also put, just like exactly if you saw the blog that went out yesterday,
yes,
I copy and paste it straight from the
Okay.
blog that goes to the teachers, right into the parent one,
okay,
and just deleted out the things that don't pertain to parents.
gotcha.
So we're trying to make sure that we have those ahead of time, and that gets out. It was, I don't know, it's a funny year. It was just like, a lot of stuff was funny and
Mhm.
just kind of, for lack of better words, just trying to think of the word to describe it.
Expected.
Unexpected changes, a lot of different changes. So hopefully as the year goes on, that will smooth out. And they'll get stuff, like today we sat down and planned May. So we'll sit down and I'll send May out to everyone
Mhm.
and just kind of get their eyes on it to say, hey, what's going on? What do we need to do? Are there any changes that need to be made? And then once we have that set, I'll add it to our master calendar. I'll add it to a Google calendar. But we're also talking about pulling, maybe there's a PTO calendar that goes on the website,
Yeah,
and then there's a Google calendar. So we're talking about maybe finding a way to merge those. So we're just
Yeah.
down to 2 calendars, staff and family.
okay,
And,
that makes sense, yeah.
and so we'll work that.
I'm just gonna make a comment that, being on a team of just 2 people, or we're at different campuses, I mean, we stay in touch with each other pretty well, but I think one of the disconnects that I've kind of seen, and I'm not thinking about anybody in particular, is like, if you miss something on the scoop and it goes out in the group meet or one of the other venues, I think there are some people that might not be on group meet.
Yes.
Maybe they don't want to use their cellular data for that. So I was thinking if there's some way we can put, down to grade levels, if the grade levels could establish the one person that is on GroupMe to share that information with everybody. I mean, that's one thing, like if you say, we need y'all to push something out to your parents today. And then that might help that issue. I don't know if this is what you're experiencing, but like, this child's class heard about it, but this child's class didn't. You know, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Scoop is what
Kinda
I
like
get
what's
from
that?
Mr. Hudson, just Scoop it.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
Group
okay.
Me is just all the stuff.
It's GroupMe is like an internal messaging.
Okay,
So
so like
it's
a quick,
just-
easy message.
Yeah, so sometimes it may be, hey,
It
who
doesn't
left this
necessarily-
water bottle?
Okay, but
Yeah.
like
But-
text it.
But it's between the staff too, so it's two-way.
Yeah,
You know, hey, has anyone heard of this? And then they can respond.
Yeah.
And so what she's saying, which is true, we know that everyone is not on GroupMe because that was completely
Well, and you might
voluntary.
not have time. I mean, literally, there's some days I walk in and I put my first out and I don't know where the hours is.
Yeah.
Is
You
that-
know,
that's
and
true.
it's like, oh, I didn't catch that.
Mhm.
So if he's, you know, like one morning we needed to meet in the gym real quickly and everybody was like, what, where did you get that information? So, it is, I will say it's better this year than I feel like it was last year. Don't you think so?
I don't know.
I feel so.
That's just me being completely honest.
I feel like it's been really helpful.
It's 103 members by now.
Yes,
That's a lot.
that is a lot, but then there's those poor people.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
like
and then
a
that kind
great
of makes it look.
Kind of like a room
like
parent,
a, like a,
teacher.
but they have like a team lead, right?
Every grade level has a team leader.
Okay, so the team lead would kind of play that role.
Or they can share, they can have a communication.
Yeah.
person.
I was gonna say, are you the communications person,
As far as,
the school? Like, if somebody.
no,
let's say
no, the
someone-
communication
you were-
person is Chrissy.
Okay, okay. Okay. Well, because I'm just like thinking, so like even you mentioned in this meeting that there's a math club. So there's math clubs. I didn't know. It didn't come home to the parents. I think it was internally to the school, which then the students would come home and say that they want to join a math.
Yeah.
And if there are things like that where it's like student driven, student led, I understand that. But I'm just kind of wondering how do things get decided that are going to be internal and things that are going to be external?
So, and we didn't talk about that specifically, but we did talk about just having a grade level letter coming. So the general weekly stuff goes out, or maybe once a month having a grade level letter that goes out. That was discussed as well. And so,
Like from the teachers?
like,
Or
coming from maybe,
Or
an
like from like
administrator.
or Ashley or, you know. like-
yeah, talking from an administrator, just talking with the team and saying, hey, what's on the agenda for this month, and then getting it out like
Okay.
at one time.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, we brought up the example of,
Ellis Island.
Ellis Island. And so, you know, we talked about that. And so just trying to consolidate. Another thing that came up, and the reason why we switched to Dojo was based on parent feedback from last year, that they are tired of going to here, there, here for all these things. So that's why we came to Dojo for one source of information. So even when the newsletters go out, we want them to go out Dojo, but we understand that there may be some challenges with Dojo,
Yeah.
sending lengthier emails. And so we're talking about
And like
emails.
links don't really like work in the dojo like I've noticed like some teachers have their own dojo, like I saw music and I've seen SEL puts things out on dojo. But it's kind of,
So it's mainly for, you know, mainly for the teachers to get all the general information. I've been sending general information out, but I'm also sending it by remind because I know that
Yeah.
some parents are not on, and I think we have 980 parents signed up so far for Dojo. So we may have to do another big push for Dojo to go out. When there are things that are quick, I use Remind and Dojo because I do want to keep steering everyone towards Dojo. So eventually we will be 100% Dojo. And this is year one. So we
Yeah,
are
it's gonna
making a
be
lot of
everything.
changes there are a lot of different changes that we were making with communication for this year based on recommendations. And so it's just a matter of getting the kinks out, finding what works best and adapting the changes as we go.
do we have any form of communication that is like everyone? regardless of if they've signed up or not? Is there anything that goes out
Remind.
to
You
everyone?
can send things
So
through
Remind
Infinite
is one that
Campus.
goes to everybody?
You are supposed to be able to send things through Infinite Campus, but I will tell you, when the gifted department tried that and to get the approvals for testing, we found some email typos.
Oh.
And then we also realized that parents might have done that when their child is in kindergarten and now they're fourth or fifth grader, they don't use that email address anymore.
But that should be updated.
That is something that I think should be done, because that's when you get even the weather alerts and things from the Atlanta Public Schools. They're digging into that. And so if you're allotted to hear about that, then that's because your email, and the teachers are going in sometimes and they're pulling those emails too. I mean, that's what I've done before, and I'm like,
That's what I've
it's not right. So then you have to get on the phone and call the person.
And parents received their Infinite Campus email when they got their most recent progress report, because I know I've received that. You got your progress report, and I received, this is what is your email address in Infinite Campus. Please review that this is correct.
Okay, and now for the gifted thing specifically, I had to dig into this way more than I wanted to, but whoever is emergency contact one is the only one that's getting it. So I don't know what other portals pull from, in like what fields, like the software behind how it works, but I just know that, I mean, poor Miss Anderson, she was tired of seeing me come to her desk, and we got another email we gotta fix. But I mean, that was just the way that was designed. I mean, if you got any questions, there's a man named Buck Green that knows all of this. He's gonna hate me for telling him my name.
He's gonna call me. Buck was one of my old bosses.
K-12.
Okay, security funds, this is the last thing. Security funds, so far, and when I say this is my intention, because we haven't spent anything yet, but it should be spent on the fences. And then my next thing is cameras. And the third was an SRO, but based on this week's board meeting, it looks like we won't have to address that. So I'm hoping that if we don't have to pay for the SRO, and if we don't have to pay for the fence, then that may leave a lot of money for us to do some other things. And that's where we're gonna have our security advisory committee come together and meet, and we'll probably have after, I need to meet with one more group, parent group from here, and then we'll set up some dates for after the break, where it is more than likely, someone recommended a Zoom, and so more than likely will be a Zoom for the first one, because they're gonna be, if it's like what the survey say, we'll have at least 60 parents. And I think that's too many,
That will just be the first meeting.
the first meeting. And so that is the goal right now. And other than that, we're just trucking along and trying to get into the classes as much as possible and see some growth.
You'll hear do you have a cluster advisory report with more?
Well, we just met on September the 18th, and it was we had a cameo appearance from Dr. Johnson, and he talked about his 100-day plan, and then he got pretty specific and talked about how his focus was getting the attention and the help to the schools, that the schools needed. And there had been some changes and some shifts in positions and such at the district level. And then he said, that was kind of it. And then they just basically described to us what the cluster advisory team is supposed to do. And we elected officers and have meetings set for the year. So it was kind of a little, they did ask for what should be on our radar. You know, we broke into just chat rooms, like whatever rooms on Zoom, breakout rooms. And in the North Atlanta cluster, you know, we brought up the fact that the gifted model is changing. We're going to lose the cluster And so I've actually been emailing, the strategic office this week about that, and it's my understanding they're meeting with, the IB folks, Chandra Gibson and Shalita Champion and Diane Jacoby are talking with our cluster advisory team about how to bring this up and what to look at, because it's going to impact IB schools the most.
So when are we going to use the cluster?
You're going to have to go to, for the lower grades for elementary, you're going to have to go to the kindergarten through fifth grade. You will be only allowed to do the cluster, which means you have a gifted endorsed teacher in the classroom. And you may not need, I guess, two of us, because we would just be testing students. We wouldn't be seeing students. The gifted endorsed teacher does the work. We do not, right now, the collaboration model is what we have. And we are able to collaborate with the teachers who are not gifted endorsed, and as well with those who are, but kind of support them and also meet with their students, because it says in the gifted manual you can collaborate with the students. But there's a very few models that work with IB. And so I think the district is now looking at, is there any latitude now within IB? Because could the resource model be used so long as we did not use these little silo kinds of this curriculum that's provided by the gifted department? So those are, it's a lot kind of to think about and tease out, but the state is changing it, because last year there was an audit that revealed many kind of egregious, apparently, FTE errors. Like, they were saying kids were gifted and they weren't, or they were saying they were being served by a gifted endorsed teacher, and it wasn't just Atlanta, it was statewide. And so there's, documentation that we're required to produce. Anyway, it's one of those things that's just, it's gonna have to percolate. It doesn't come into effect until school year 26, 27, but it's, time moves on and we need to look at it sooner rather than later. So that's what we're looking at, because it also puts pressure on principals hiring, to get gifted endorsed teachers in the classroom so you can earn those FTE dollars. And gifted FTE is a substantial amount of money.
So, and that has been our stance since I've been here. So if we hire a teacher, we either, if we feel strongly about them and they're not gifted, in the interview, we ask them, are you willing to get gifted endorsement?
And that's another thing that they were mentioning too with the gifted department. It's like a graduate level course, and it is really hard. So when the teacher does say that they want to do it, there is a bit of a dropout rate. Because the pressures of being a classroom teacher are pretty big, and then just living your life outside of work, so I think it's something that is fantastic, but I think you have to kind of look at all of the different options on the table, because you didn't, once, and if you incentivize teachers and you give them like a stipend or something, they're not necessarily obligated to stay at your school, so I mean, it's kind of it's like nailing Jello to a tree. I mean, it's not really easy to do, Y'all got that visual, didn't you?
Thanks for that new.
And a funny one, you use that.
I mean, you
Yeah.
just can't contain it. It's just, so anyway, but I think that, if you look at the resource model, like what we were kind of looking at is continuing at the PLI, IB curriculum and stuff, and continuing what they're doing in the classroom, not taking some different unit about peacocks in Holland or something and trying to teach that. And you can also help move the needle on those gifted students in math and reading, because nothing gets gifted kids attention than I'm looking at your math scores too, and then because if they don't pass the gifted work in a gifted classroom, they are on probation. And so magically those math scores get better, so I mean, I think that hopefully the solution could be something around that idea of helping the classroom teacher. And I think that the first step is to dovetail with IB and the most, appropriate step. And then I don't know how DLI is going to be affected with it. But if they can't come out of the rooms to do that resource model for the all-day instruction, then that becomes a choice. Do I want to be in DLI or do I want this? So it's a lot to tease out, but
Well,
we
even,
got 2 years.
yeah, even with that, inclusive program, so whether it's special ed, gifted, ESOL, they can all be it.
Do we have any announcements? Any other announcements? Any other comments? We have reached the end of our agenda. Is there any additional business at this time? May I have a motion? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion.
A second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But I need.
We got a hearing logins for struggling.
Coming to a meeting, I'm not allowed to talk.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure.
That's why I didn't ask.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that email.
But I did raise my hand, and I said, Buck was my boss too.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I don't think really
Like,
So.
You
were trying to come
over.
No.
You remember when
Really, you did?
I was asking,
Oh,
also asked
thank
if
you.
we had started, whatever they told us to do, like stream it live. How many remember?
It really ranges.
It varies.
Like if we could do that.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.